No matter what path you choose to walk, and whether you believe or not, you can be certain that a fairy is watching.
Hello, fairy finders and fairy seekers. Welcome to Fairy Quest. In today's episode, I'm going to take you down memory lane to when I first began taking photographs of fairies. And along for the ride here is Sammy. Thought it was apropos considering he comes on every photo shoot with us. I'm going to show you first, this is what I call the magic camera. There's really nothing magic about this camera. It is a typical Samsung 16.2 megapixel camera that I did get, I believe, in 2016, and it has served me very, very well. In fact, it is still the camera that I am using now. I have been looking into getting something that has a few more megapixels, but until I do, this will suffice. But anyway, this is the camera. There is really nothing special about it. I prefer to use the digital camera versus my phone. I just feel like I have more control over enlarging the pictures. Excuse Sammy, he's going to start his snoring on my lap. I feel like I have more control over the pictures in Photoshop when I enlarge them and go through them, because the phone camera seems to almost make the pictures seem painted rather than photographed when you enlarge in Photoshop. So anyway, that was kind of off the beaten track here. We are going to visit Effigy Mounds in Harpers Ferry, Iowa, and I'm going to show you where it all began. So I'm switching over to my computer screen now. Okay, so we're going to start at Effigy Mounds in 2004. If you remember, I began taking photographs of fairies, little people, whatever you'd like to call them, in 2016. But in 2004, this is where we became familiar with Effigy Mounds in Harpers Ferry. And it is a Native American burial ground with, I believe, 3 separate tiers so that you can see mounds on different tiers. We made it up the first mound, or excuse me, the first tier, but no further than that. And in 2004, I had a website called Night Watchman Chronicles, which ran for about 14 years. We let it lapse in 2017. So when we went to Effigy Mounds, I was actually looking for paranormal photographs and did find a few that I'd like to share with you so you can see how magical Effigy Mounds actually is and how it led to the fairies in 2016. So this first photograph here, what I noticed first and foremost going up this path here was the Native American looking stone here, very large stone. And then obviously that was in real time. Later, looking at the pictures, I discovered the doll. And let me make this a little larger here. So we have a doll here, and you can see hair on this doll with eyes, nose, mouth. Here's the body. The legs and feet are down here, or the legs and feet are here. And the arm is here, one of them, and one of the arms is here. It seems to be made of sunlight. The next picture, and we've got 902 or 0902, and this one is 0903. So here's the one I had enlarged, 0902. Here's 0903 and taken immediately after. And the sun has changed, but you can still see she will eventually fade. Okay, so that was a really, really cool find in a photo. One of a supernatural, to us anyway, supernatural doll in a photograph made out of leaves and sticks and that kind of thing. I did try and get another photograph of this doll to see if she would show up again in 2016, but there was a lot of growth, so no doll. Okay, so anyway, she was starting to fade in this one. The next thing that I took a picture of from kind of the same type of trail. It has fencing over here, and you can look out over the fence, but this goes up and around this way, and you keep going up. This was overlooking from one of those trails just out at the woods, and I was kind of fascinated for some reason with this stump that had been hit by lightning, obviously, and burned down. It was totally crispy. And so I took that picture, and I took a second picture. Now if I enlarge, and you can see the difference between the two, I had one that I pulled up a little closer and one that was a little bit further away. But when you pull this, enlarge this up to 100%, it's a very unique looking stump, but you can tell that it's charcoaled. And for me, what I see in this stump, I can't unsee now. So I'm going to show you what I outlined. This is the other one that is at 100%. Going to show you what I outlined in this stump. We have a Native American man that is a part of this stump. And if you can see, I mean, obviously the hair, very dark. We have the chin, mouth, nose, eyes, even eyebrows. So go back to the actual picture and you can see him as clear as can be in this stump in both pictures. So we found this very paranormal, very exciting actually to see. So it wasn't until 2016 that we went back again. By this time we were actually considering maybe letting Night Watchman Chronicles go, but we did not actually do that until 2017. But Effigy Mounds did not disappoint, only we went looking again for paranormal pictures, but we discovered, and I say we because it was my husband and I, we discovered fairies, or little people, or whatever you'd like to call them, instead. So the very first fairy, and again, keep in mind, we did not see these with the naked eye. We didn't see them until going through photos again after getting home. And the first one here is 0880. And as I was looking for the pictures, I always pop them up to 200%, and I go through them a little at a time, side to side. And the one that showed up for me was right here. And obviously, even if you backtrack the picture a bit, something looks a little odd there. And then bringing it forward again, you can tell there's a little head here, and it looks like he's holding a staff. We have legs here, and I still believe that he is sitting on something. I've kind of isolated him here, and I'll make that a little bit bigger so you can see, but you can see the eyes, and he's kind of behind some of the leaves here. So he's a bit segmented, but he's a fairy. And again, fairies are many different species, or I should say fae are many different species, so I call them all fairies, unless I know what kind of fairy that they might actually be. So this was my first introduction, and once I saw this, I was like, okay, this is so cool. And I went out of the paranormal realm completely. I guess instead of looking for apparitions and orbs and things like that, I started looking for fairies. And back then I was calling them wee folk. So sometimes I still slip back into the wee folk. But the pictures that we took at Effigy Mounds had a lot of them. So I am just showing you a few of the main ones. But this was the very, very first fairy that I took a photo of, or I should say found in my photos. I call him the guard, and that's just something I call him. So moving on to this photograph, I need to enlarge it. There's quite a few in each one of these photos, but there's certain things that really stood out for me. And you can see down here in the corner, and I currently have this up to 200%, but there is something here that is wearing a hat. Now, this also began my education in fairies, discovering that they really did enjoy wearing hats and oftentimes would form themselves out of the shadows, out of the leaves, enough forming to be able to tell that they were a living, breathing fairy. So this one to me reminds me of a leprechaun, and I isolated him again, and we'll make him a little bit bigger, but you can see his nose, and I'll see if I can get the pointer here. Here's his hat, okay, different color a little bit than the leaf that is behind him. His head, he's got kind of a rather large nose here. His eye is closed. We can see feet, we can see legs. Here's his body, and it looks like this is his arm reaching up. We'll go back to the other one, move over a little bit so you can see. But there he is. You can see that these are his legs and his feet. But he's adorable. So that was another one that stood out for me. And as you can see, you know, if you have the picture down to 100%, you shrink it down, he's pretty small in comparison to how big of a area this is. He's just a little guy. So moving on, here was another photograph taken, and this one had, going up to 100%, a guy right back here, and he's a bearded guy, and he's kind of leaning on his hand, and you really, when you're looking at it like this at 200%, you know there's something there, but it's the isolating that really shows what it is that you're looking at. And sometimes there isn't anything. I mean, it looks like something, but it's not. So you move on. But as you can see, this guy, he's got a beard. You can see his hair, his eye, his nose, his mouth. Here's part of his body. He's a very hairy man. But he has fingers here that he's kind of leaning his forehead against, blocking his head from the tree. And see if he can see, there's his fingers right here. So that was another interesting thing to see, is that sometimes far off in the photographs you might find something, and again, the larger you make them, the blurrier they get, because he's off in the distance, but he's also not very big. When you look at him, you know, this is at 200%. If I put the picture back down to 100%, he's pretty small back there. But that's why when putting it up to 200% and going through it, you know, little bit by little bit, it is amazing what can be found in them. So then we go to another one, and this one I actually missed at first. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, that's crazy. So what I found in this one is a gnome, and he looks, it was another learning situation where I discovered that a lot of times these fairies will do their best to blend into the background so that they're not as noticeable. Obviously, they are probably very distrusting of humans, but you can see him here. You can see his beard and his hat, which is actually a little bit different color, and what made him stand out, almost as though he were outlined. And his eyes, his nose, his little mustache, his little mouth, there's his beard, here's his body, and he is, I'm not exactly sure even what he's standing on, but he's between those two trees. Here's an isolated picture of him, and I'll enlarge that. But as you can see, he is quite camouflaged when you're looking at a whole picture. And again, going through it with a fine-tooth comb, now that you know where he is, you can see him. But it was the initial finding, and like I said, I overlooked him the first time. I received another bit of education here in looking at this picture and bringing it up to 100% and then 200%. At first glance, you don't really see a whole lot. And I can see here, and this is kind of a special thing right now. I did not enlarge this one, but you can actually see kind of a head in this tree. And here's an arm and a hand. You can see a face, and some of these fairies actually do wear glasses and sunglasses, which is what I am seeing in this one. And we even see fingers, okay? But you notice it's not as small as some of the other ones that we've looked at so far. And again, it made me pay attention to the fact that not all these fairies are super small. So if you go past this one and you come over here and you take a look, and again, right now I'm at 300%. I don't take it over 2 when I am actually going through the photographs, but I'm showing you here. So we have a being here. We can see he's kind of got a flat-topped head, his eyes, nose. Here's the head. Here's the body, here's his arm and his hand, his leg, he's wearing a boot, and by him is an elf. We can see that the elf is wearing some kind of, it looks almost like a helmet, and his feet come out here. He's kind of leaning against this tree, and his feet are here. So we can take a little bit better look here with them isolated and bring them up. So you can tell that this elf is separated from the tree. It is a being, and so is this one. So apparently those two are friends, or this little elf was waiting for this one, not hiding from him, but waiting for him. And the last thing that I'm going to show you is something that I actually totally missed for quite a few years, actually, until I went back to look at some of the photographs that I had taken at Effigy. And it was one of those that I just really couldn't even believe that I could possibly have missed it. And it goes to show that, again, not all of the fairies are tiny. Some of them are even bigger than this, and that they do form themselves, as we can see through color, they do form themselves with leaves, with trees. And again, the trees, here's the one that blended itself into the tree. These blended themselves into the color background upon seeing me. And then we have the last one, which is, I'm going to call him he's not a gnome, I don't think. I'm going to say dwarf, if we're talking species of fairy, okay? And it looks like this one is a stump, okay? But look at it. This here, and again, let me get the pointer. This one here is not part of this dwarf. This one, this part, yes. And here is an ear, very clear. Here's the top of his head. We can see very bushy eyebrows and the eyes. And we can see part of the mustache where the nose would be, but it's hiding behind this leaf. And then, of course, the beard. And you can see how close I was standing. Sorry about that. How close I was standing to this when I took this photograph. And this is at 100% here. I was right here. And this was right in front of me. But sometimes being right in front of you, you don't see what is right in front of you, right under your nose. And he was literally right under my nose. But look how large he is. He stuck up through all this foliage here. And I didn't see him because I was busy looking out here. And even when I went through the photograph the first time, I did not see him. Until, again, like I said, years later, I came back to look at this photograph for the Fairy Quest YouTube channel to get something on him. And that's when I was like, how could I have possibly missed him? So this was the start of my adventures with taking photographs of fairies. I hope you've enjoyed this probably longer than it was supposed to be video. And that you've made it, to the end, because it is really fascinating what you can see if you're actually looking. So until next time, take care.